A lot of people spent their entire lives believing a dangerous lie about money. The lie that only those who build a giant company, appear in the news, invent something that changes the world, or simply get lucky at the right moment, become wealthy. It sounds beautiful when we hear those stories, doesn't it? The problem is that when a person believes this, they start looking at their own life as if they were at a disadvantage from the very beginning. They think, I'm just a common worker. I only have my salary. This will never happen to me. And that is exactly where so many people give up before they even start. But I want to show you a much more useful, much more real, and much more powerful truth. Prosperity does not begin when money becomes large. It begins when the mind changes. It begins the moment you stop looking at your salary as something small and start seeing it as a seed. And every seed, when treated the right way, has the potential to grow. It doesn't matter if today it seems simple, modest, or even insufficient. What matters is what you do with it. Think with me calmly. A salary can seem like nothing more than an amount that comes in and goes out every month. It enters the account, pays bills, covers expenses, resolves emergencies, disappears, and then everything starts over. For many people, that is its only function. Work, receive, spend, repeat. Work, receive, spend, repeat. And after years living this way, the person looks back and realizes they worked too hard, got too tired, ran too much, but built almost nothing. Not because they were incapable, not because they were foolish, not because fate was against them, but because no one ever taught them that a salary is not only for surviving. A salary can also serve to build. That is the difference between those who live trapped and those who begin walking toward freedom. Two people can earn exactly the same amount at the end of the month, but arrive at completely different destinations. One uses all the money only to maintain the present. The other sets a portion aside to strengthen the future. One sees the salary as a period. The other sees the salary as a starting point. And that difference, which seems small at first, changes everything over time. Perhaps no one has ever told you this so directly, but wealth is not born, in most cases, from a great leap. It is born from small decisions, repeated with intelligence. It is not always about earning more first. Many times, it is about making better use of what already comes into your hands. Because money, when it reaches you, asks a silent question. Will you consume me entirely, or will you put me to work for you? And the answer you give today begins to draw the life you will have tomorrow. I know that for many people, talking about prosperity while earning a salary seems almost contradictory. Because the world taught that whoever has a job can only trade time for money, and that financial freedom would be a privilege of the few. But that is not the complete story. The salary may be the humble beginning of the journey, but it can also be the tool that organizes your life, finances your learning, creates your reserve, buys your first assets, and opens doors that once seemed distant. The same money that today seems short can be the first brick of something much larger, as long as it is treated with intention. And here is a point that almost no one notices. Prosperity does not depend only on the amount you receive, but on the awareness with which you manage what you receive. There are people who earn a lot and are always chasing the next paycheck, always tight, always anxious, always promising that next month they will get organized. And there are people who earn less, but learn to give direction to their own money. Learn to protect a part of it, to invest in themselves, to build step by step a solid foundation. In the end, it is not only those who earn the most who win. Often, it is those who understand the game earliest. That is why I want you to hold on to this idea firmly. Your salary does not have to be a prison. It can be the seed of your prosperity. It can be the beginning of your transformation. It may be small today, but small does not mean useless. Small, when well cared for, grows. Small, when well directed, multiplies. Small, when it reaches the right hands, stops being merely payment and becomes a tool. The question is not whether you started big. The question is whether you are willing to start with intelligence. Because wealth, almost always, does not smile first at those who dream the highest. It smiles at those who learn to act better with what they already have in their hands. The first path is simple to understand, but difficult for many people to put into practice because it directly touches a very old habit, the habit of waiting for something to be left over. And this waiting, most of the time, becomes a silent trap. The person works the entire month, receives the salary, pays the bills, resolves a problem here, covers an emergency there, buys something that seemed deserved, helps someone, installments another, and at the end looks at the account and says the phrase that has become routine, "Next month I'll start saving." But the following month arrives and the story repeats itself almost exactly. Then another comes, and then another. And when they realize it, years have passed, and the habit of saving never left the paper. This is the point that separates those who merely earn money from those who begin to build prosperity. Those who prosper do not wait for money to be left over. Those who prosper decide, before anything else, that a portion of that amount will not be touched, even if it seems little, even if at first it seems almost insignificant, even if it is an amount that impresses no one. Because the most important thing at the beginning is not the size of the amount, it is the birth of the habit. Think of a person who plants a tree. On the first day, they see no shade, no fruit, no beauty. They see only a small beginning buried in the earth. An impatient person might look at it and say, it is not worth the effort. But whoever understands growth knows that important things almost always begin discreetly. With money, it is the same. Setting aside a small part of income may seem like little to impatient eyes, but it is precisely this small gesture repeated that changes the direction of financial life. The problem is that many people treat saving as if it were a prize of abundance, as if setting money aside were something reserved only for when life were perfect, bills in order, surprises non-existent, and the salary well above what is needed. But that scenario almost never arrives in the ideal form. There will always be an unexpected expense, an urgent desire, a convincing justification, an apparent need. If a person only saves when everything is calm, they will probably spend their entire life without starting. That is why learning to save is not just a financial action. It is a change of posture. It is saying to yourself, before paying the whole world, I will set aside a part to build my security. This is not selfishness. This is responsibility. Because when you do not protect a portion of what you earn, you become more vulnerable to any wind that blows against your life. An unexpected bill becomes despair. A problem at work becomes fear. A simple emergency becomes debt. But when there is the habit of saving, even gradually, the person begins to feel something rare: tranquility. And notice carefully, I am not talking here about setting aside great fortunes all at once. That frightens, paralyzes, and makes many people give up before trying. I'm talking about something possible, real, achievable. A small amount set aside every month, a silent commitment to one's own future, a firm decision to stop living only to put out fires and begin, even if slowly, to build protection. Because saving at the beginning does not impress from the outside, but on the inside, it begins to change the way the person sees themselves. They stop being someone who merely passes money forward and become someone who retains, organizes, and protects. And there is a powerful detail in all of this. When you learn to pay yourself first, you teach your mind that your future matters. This is deeper than it seems. Most people live attending to the urgencies of the present. Everything is for now. Everything is immediate. Everything seems like a priority. But when you set aside an amount first, even a small one, you are saying through actions, not just words, that tomorrow also deserves care. And a person who thinks this way begins to mature financially. At first, it may even feel strange. Perhaps you look at that saved amount and think it makes no difference. Perhaps you feel the urge to touch it. Perhaps the temptation arises to say, "It's just this once." But it is exactly at that point that the habit strengthens or breaks. Prosperity is not built only with good intentions. It is built with repetition, with consistency, with the ability to maintain a decision even when no one is watching, even when the amount still seems small, even when the results are still not grand. Over time, what was once effort becomes custom. What once seemed like sacrifice becomes part of the identity. And then something important happens. You stop depending only on hope and begin to count on a foundation you yourself built. That foundation is not born from a great stroke of luck. It is born from simple choices made month after month. And that is how many ordinary people begin to escape hardship. Not with a financial miracle, but with the discipline of setting aside first. Saving money, in the end, is not just about accumulating bills or numbers in an account. It is building peace. It is buying breathing room. It is creating space to think better. It is leaving behind the feeling that any difficulty can bring everything crashing down. And all of this begins not when there is something left over, but when you decide that you will no longer wait for something to be left over to do what needs to be done. The second path is one of the most profitable and at the same time one of the most ignored by those who live complaining they earn too little, investing in their own growth. Many people want to receive more without becoming more valuable. They want a higher income, but continue with the same knowledge, the same skills, the same habits, and the same way of thinking. And here is a truth that few people face directly. The market almost always pays better to those who solve bigger problems, with more competence, with more clarity, and with more confidence. That is why buying the right book can be worth more than buying something to show others. Taking a useful course can yield more than many impulsive purchases. Listening to an experienced person, learning a new skill, improving communication, understanding sales, finance, technology, leadership, negotiation, or any competence that increases your usefulness to the world can open doors that a stagnant salary would never open alone. Because in the end, your income tends to follow your perceived value. Think of two people who start at the same point. Both work, both receive, both face similar difficulties. But one of them finishes the workday and surrenders entirely to autopilot. They live repeating the same days, with the same thoughts, without reserving time to grow. The other may also be tired, may also face problems, but decides to use a portion of their time and money to strengthen themselves. They read, they learn, they improve. They observe those who have already gone further. They ask questions. They develop new capabilities. At first, the difference between the two barely shows. But after 1 year, 5, the distance between them can be enormous. This happens because personal growth is not an expense. It is an asset. And many people do not understand this. When someone buys something that loses value the next instant, almost no one questions it. But when that same person needs to pay for a course, a training, a mentorship, books or tools that expand their capacity to earn more, suddenly they find it expensive. The problem is that what seems expensive in the present is often exactly what could make the future cheaper, reducing errors, shortening paths, and increasing opportunities. There is a simple but powerful idea here. To increase their salary, people often first need to increase themselves. Before asking for recognition, they need to become more prepared. Before charging more, they need to deliver more value. Before expecting a big change in the bank account, they need to provoke a big change inside their own mind. Because money tends to follow competence, discipline, and the ability to generate results. And I am not talking only about diplomas or titles. I am talking about real growth, the kind that shows in the way you speak, how you think, how you decide, how you solve, how you position yourself, and how you learn faster than most. A person who learns to communicate better begins to be heard differently. A person who understands more about money stops making the mistakes that held them back. A person who develops a marketable skill begins to see opportunities where before they only saw limits. And that changes everything. There are people who spend years saying they would like to improve their lives, but do not set aside even a little energy to become better at what they do. They want to harvest fruit from a field they never fertilize. They want progress without preparation. They want reward without expansion. But prosperity does not work that way. Today's income, in many cases, is simply a reflection of the level of value the person has managed to build up until now. And the good news is that this can change. Not overnight, but in a real, consistent, and powerful way. When you invest in your own growth, something interesting begins to happen. You stop depending only on the strength of your work and begin to depend also on the strength of your capability. And well-developed capability opens paths. It can help you get a promotion, change fields, charge more for a service, open an extra income stream, negotiate with more confidence, or even see opportunities that were always in front of you, but which you were not yet prepared to take advantage of. And see how important this is. No one can take from you what has been built inside you. An object can break. An asset can lose value. A trend can pass. But useful knowledge, practical skill, and a strengthened mindset continue to produce results for a long time. That is why investing in yourself is one of the most intelligent applications anyone can make. Because you are not just spending on learning. You are increasing the machine that produces your income. At the beginning, it may seem like nothing has changed. You read and still see no immediate return. You study and still feel no great results. You learn and the world seems to remain the same. But on the inside, something has already begun to move. Your vision becomes broader. Your confidence grows, your perception improves, your way of acting becomes more strategic, and sooner or later, this begins to appear on the outside. At work, in relationships, in opportunities, in money. Those who want to earn more without growing on the inside almost always end up frustrated, but those who accept the process of developing themselves begin to build a foundation that no one sees at first, but which sustains much greater results in the future. And that is why this path is so powerful. Before increasing your income, it increases you. And when you truly grow, your financial life can hardly remain the same. The third path is learning to control expenses, because there is no point in earning more if money keeps slipping through your hands. Many people are not trapped because they earn too little. They are trapped because they turn every present desire into a priority. They buy to relieve exhaustion, to feel rewarded, or to impress people who, in the end, will not pay their bills. That is where one of the most costly mistakes in financial life lives. The person begins to think they need to show success before building it. They trade peace for appearances. They finance a car beyond what they can afford, buy things they do not need, spend on excess to look good in front of others. But on the inside, they remain without reserves, without security, and without freedom. It looks like prosperity on the outside, but on the inside it is disguised hardship. True wealth begins when you learn to say, "Not now." Not to live depriving yourself of everything, but to stop surrendering your future because of impulses of the moment. Every time you avoid a pointless expense, you are not just saving money, you are buying space, breathing room, and choice for tomorrow. Those who prosper understand this early. Freedom is worth more than appearances, and many times, what makes a person grow is not only what they earn, but what they decide not to spend. The fourth path is creating extra sources of income. Employment can bring stability, but depending on it alone leaves life very vulnerable. It takes only a cut, a crisis, or an unexpected problem for everything to shake. That is why those who truly want to prosper learn to use time outside of work more strategically. This does not mean doing everything at once. It means starting with what is possible, learning a marketable skill, offering a service, testing a simple idea, selling something you know how to do well. It may be small at first, but the important thing is to open a new entry point for money. This is how the mindset changes. The person stops thinking only as someone who receives and begins to think as someone who also creates. And when new income streams begin to appear, even if still modest, the sense of security grows, because prosperity almost always comes from initiative, not from waiting. The fifth path is surrounding yourself with people who elevate your vision. This matters more than many people imagine, because the environment around you gradually shapes thoughts, habits, and even the size of dreams. When someone lives surrounded by people who only complain, spend without thinking, and make no plans, over time, this begins to seem normal. But when you get close to people who talk about growth, organization, investment, and the future, your mind begins to change. You start to see possibilities you did not notice before. You begin to think with more responsibility and healthier ambition. No one grows alone all the time. Often, change begins when you hear a different conversation, learn from the right example, and decide to no longer accept a life lived on autopilot. Being near those who build also teaches you to build. The sixth path is making money work for you. Saving is important because it creates protection, but investing is what allows growth. Money sitting still protects the present. Money well applied helps build the future. Many people spend years working hard, but never teach their own money to produce more money. And that is where time loses its strength. Because when you invest with intelligence, your resources begin to grow without depending only on the hours you work. Gradually, the effort stops coming only from your hands and passes also to the assets you have built. Stocks, real estate, funds, and other productive resources come in exactly at this point. They represent the idea of placing money into something that can yield returns, generate income, and multiply over time. At the beginning, it may seem small, but with consistency, this movement changes the game. Whoever understands this stops seeing the salary as an end and begins to use it as a bridge. One part pays for today's life, another part builds tomorrow's freedom. And that is how money stops being something that merely comes in and goes out and begins to transform into an ally. The seventh path is the one that almost no one applauds at the beginning, but which lies behind almost every solid construction of wealth: patience and discipline. And I know that these two words do not usually attract as much attention as quick promises, immediate gains, or stories of sudden success. But the truth is that most people do not fail because they do not know what to do. They fail because they do not accept the time that truly important things take to grow. We live in a hurried world. People want to plant today and harvest tomorrow. They want to start saving money this month and already feel rich next month. They want to invest a small amount and in a short time see their life completely transformed. But real wealth rarely comes from that. Real wealth looks much more like the growth of a tree. On the day the seed is placed in the earth, there is no shade, no fruit, no visible beauty. There is only faith, care, and continuity. And that is exactly why so many people give up too early, because they confuse a silent beginning with a lack of results. But the fact that something grows slowly does not mean it is standing still. Think about this calmly. Underground, where no one can see, the root is forming. It is deepening. It is creating a foundation. It is strengthening itself to sustain what will later appear above the soil. With money, the same thing happens. When a person saves small amounts, invests regularly, and repeats this process for years, it may seem like little is happening at first, but something very important has already begun. They are building roots. This root has a name: habit, consistency, control, clarity, maturity. And without it, any attempt at prosperity becomes something fragile, unstable, easy to break at the first setback. That is why discipline is so valuable, because it prevents you from destroying tomorrow because of a desire today. It makes you continue even when enthusiasm fades. It makes you maintain the plan even when no one is cheering. It makes you keep laying one brick at a time, even when the house cannot yet be seen in its entirety. Many people give up precisely because they underestimate the power of the small. They look at a small amount and think, this is not going to change my life. But this is one of the most dangerous ideas anyone can nurture. Because it is not only today's amount that matters, it is the movement it initiates. A small amount invested once may seem irrelevant, but a small amount invested consistently, month after month, year after year, begins to tell a different story. It is no longer about the isolated value. It is about repetition. It is about time working in your favor. It is about the silent accumulation that almost no one respects at the beginning, but everyone admires when it finally becomes visible. Financial discipline works like a bridge between the present and freedom. Without it, money comes and disappears. With it, money begins to stay, grow, and organize itself. And this transforms not only the bank account, but also the person's heart. Because whoever learns to wait stops being a slave to urgency. They stop constantly chasing immediate satisfaction. They learn to trade impulse for direction. And this trade changes destinies. It is important to understand one thing. Patience is not passivity. Patience is not sitting and waiting for life to improve on its own. Patience in this context is continuing to do the right thing even when results are still modest. It is continuing to save when the amount still seems small. It is continuing to invest when growth still seems slow. It is continuing to trust the process when comparisons with other people try to make you feel behind. Patience is strength with continuity. And discipline is also not about living a hard life, without joy, without rest, and without pleasure. It is not about turning life into punishment. It is about bringing order to what was once disorder. It is about making conscious choices, about knowing that not every desire needs to be attended to the moment it appears, about understanding that future freedom is worth some not now moments in the present. The disciplined person is not one who never wants anything. They are the one who wisely chooses what is worth pursuing now and what needs to be postponed to protect something greater. The years do powerful work for those who are consistent. And that is the point that many people underestimate. People tend to overestimate what they can do in a few months and underestimate what they can build in 5, 10, or 15 years. They look at the short term and become disappointed. But whoever understands the game of wealth learns to respect the long term. They learn that financial independence does not usually come from a single brilliant move, but from hundreds of correct decisions, repeated calmly and firmly. At the beginning, you may not even receive applause. Perhaps no one will notice your discipline. Perhaps people will even mock your prudence, your care, your way of thinking about the future. Perhaps they will say you should enjoy more, spend more, live more in the moment. But many times, those who say this are trapped in cycles that never produce peace, because there is an enormous difference between enjoying life and sabotaging your own tomorrow. Those with vision understand this difference. They understand that every small choice today participates in building the tranquility of tomorrow. And then a moment arrives when what seemed slow begins to take shape. The invested amount grows. The reserve becomes firmer. The assets accumulate. The anxiety diminishes. The dependence on a single salary begins to weaken. And the person realizes they did not become wealthy through a stroke of luck. They became stronger because they learned to persevere. They learned to repeat what was right. They learned not to abandon the seed just because they could not yet see the fruits. That is how small amounts, placed with consistency and protected by time, can transform into financial independence. Not through magic, not through haste, not through empty promises, but because of a silent, firm, and extremely powerful process. A process that rewards those who understand that prosperity is not an event. It is a construction. In the end, patience protects you from the rush that destroys, and discipline protects you from yourself in moments of weakness. When the two walk together, money stops being disorganized and begins to obey a plan. And when there is a plan, consistency and time, what today seems small can, further down the road, become the foundation of the freedom that so many people dream of. But few have the courage to build with patience. And if this message made sense to you, like this video and subscribe to the channel.